You're not in my shot. I gotta fix that.
I'm not in your shot.
We gotta keep that take. There you go.
Here I am. Hello. I am here.
First Monday episode back in a month, and I'm already messing it up.
Tuesday episode.
Tuesday, right? We moved to
new
Tuesdays,
day.
right? I'm so out of sorts. Oh well. Hi friends, welcome back to the Tim and April Show. I'm Tim Whitaker,
and I'm April Ajoy.
Oh, this is our first now new Tuesday release date. I was off for a whole month. The team gave me the month off, so I was spending time with my family. And while I was out of commission, Melinda, who's the executive director of the new Evangelical, said, "You know, Tim, you release these Tim and April shows on Monday, but they kind of compete with the TNE podcast that we do. So let's just do it on Tuesday." So I said, okay, sounds good. So we're releasing this now on Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we're releasing a YouTube video and putting this also on podcast. But it's good to be back, April. It's good to see you as always. It's nice to be back in the saddle.
I know you have been missed greatly.
Stop.
I'm glad that you are back here, gracing us with your beard. It feels extra beardy today.
Yeah, I haven't shaved in a month. This past August, so we moved into a new house. I moved the studio to a whole new location, so there's a lot of stuff to get done. And shaving was not on the top of the to-do list, but at some point I'll trim it down. So yeah, maybe.
Roger that. I see. I see that. Well, I'm glad that you're here relatively in time, because while you were gone, CNN dropped this interview with Doug Wilson. And we were texting, we're like, of course, this is the month that you're off. You love talking about Doug Wilson. You've talked about him for years.
Yes. It was wild. You know, I'm on sabbatical and CNN's like, "Oh, we interviewed this guy named Doug Wilson." I'm like, I spit out my drink. I'm like, "Doug Wilson? You mean the dude that we've been talking about for years?" In fact, but someone on our team 2 years ago actually interviewed Doug for a new Evangelicals podcast because we were so concerned about what he wanted to do in America. He's one of like the most influential Christian nationalists of our time. In fact, he's actually Pete Hegseth's pastor. And one of my critiques during Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing was that no one in Congress asked Pete about Doug Wilson. And then CNN drops this piece and Doug goes mega viral for all of the wrong reasons. And April, you and I were talking like, what should we do when I come back? And I'm like, let's do the full response. Let's watch the whole 30-minute segment that CNN did of Doug Wilson and just respond to it. I think that's the first thing we need to do right out of the gate. Yeah,
because we, one of the episodes where you were gone, when Promise Backlund was on with me, or Eve was framed, we responded to the 6-minute, which I think was what they aired like on TV, but they had a longer interview version that's like a half hour.
Yeah,
they posted to YouTube that I haven't watched the whole thing, so I saved it for you.
Same. I saved it for you. Look at that.
Aww.
Yeah. So I think let's go through this thing and just see what Doug has to say. Again, you know, if you're new to the show or maybe new to the world of Christian nationalism, Doug is someone with very deep roots to the white evangelical tradition, but he's also at the same time kind of been an outlier for a lot of reasons. However, over the past, I would say 4 to 5 years, he's picked up a lot of popularity in this dominionist space. And like I said earlier, Pete Hegseth, who currently runs our military, is someone who is discipled by Doug. He goes to a church under Doug Wilson's denomination. And so there's a lot of connections here. And I think if you don't know who Doug Wilson is, you might be pretty shocked to hear what he has to say and what's being said now on mainstream cable news networks. So
yeah. And the way he says it so just nonchalantly too.
Totally.
I think that might be like the most disturbing part, is that he's saying these things with his full chest. You're like,
yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, shall we?
Shall we?
Get your coffee mug out. I got my emotional support mug out, and I'm ready to go. Here we go.
Perfect. Let's do it.
What makes this community here in Moscow so unique?
You can't make good omelets with rotten eggs. It doesn't matter how good the recipe is. It doesn't matter how good the kitchen is. Doesn't matter how good the cook is. If people aren't walking with God, then it's going to come out bad.
What would have happened if your kids didn't want to follow you?
So this was something, again, that my dad learned from the Apostle Paul, but there were 4 of us growing up in my dad's household, and we all knew that if any one of us walked away from the faith, my dad would step down from ministry.
So you just living as a practicing Christian isn't enough for you?
It's not enough, no.
What does that look like, though, in America ruled by Christ, which is what you want?
Yeah. Well, the most noticeable things right out of the gate would be things that aren't going on anymore. We wouldn't have Clown World. We wouldn't have drag queen story hours. We wouldn't have pride parades. We wouldn't have abortion on demand. You know, those things would be gone.
Should we pause?
Yeah, I think so.
We're a minute
notice
in.
How when she says, "What would a world run by Christ look like?" And he didn't say there would be no poor people. You know, all unhoused people would find homes. You know, people would be able to find health care. We would welcome asylum seekers, and we would be a place where really we loved our neighbor as ourselves. No, he goes to, there'd be no drag story hour. I think what?
And no abortion, quote, on demand, which, by the way, neither drag queen story hour nor abortions are ever talked about by Christ.
Right.
This
and
is
the whole
exactly,
abortion on demand thing is like a propagandist
100%.
like saying about it.
Gosh, there's so many ways to even address this. But to your point, April, this is why we always say that Christian nationalists, while they definitely are participating in a Christian tradition, they are antichrist in what they advocate for. Because you see Doug's sleight of hand here where he says, in a world ruled by Christ, and then lists out things that Christ never talks about, right? Christ said to liberate the oppressed. Christ said to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to heal the sick. You would think that would lead Doug in his worldview that where America should be ruled by Christ, that those things are being taken care of. But instead, he pivots right to sexual orientation. He pivots to culture war issues. And that's because Christian nationalists believe that their God has ordered society a specific way. There's a hierarchical bent to how the world functions. Men like him are at the top. And heterosexual men, for sure, definitely like him, are at the top. And then women are underneath, and then children underneath that. And there's no room for people that wouldn't submit or be or assimilate into, the sexual norms and behaviors that he deems are appropriate. But again, you're not going to find that by reading the red letters.
Right. And he's like in a world ruled by Christ. He's listing all the things that they're going to take away.
Right.
Like rights that they're taking away, not these are things we're going to make better. We're just going to take away things.
One of the reasons I love doing these videos is because people who accuse us of being hyperbolic, their arguments go away because we're just playing their own words. I'm playing for you the person who's discipling Pete Hegseth. We're a minute into a 30-minute long interview, and he's already come out swinging by saying there'd be no drag queen story hour, there'd be no abortions, because that's what Christ would want. Oh my gosh, It's insufferable. All right, let's continue.
And that would be, boy, this is different. So the thing that a lot of the people in the middle, let's call them normies, people who are they're not particularly theological, and they're not hard left either. They're just, I just want to live a normal life. Is that so wrong? The last 5 years has really unsettled them a great deal, because Clown World is not a livable place to bring up kids. It's just not. And a lot of the recoil or the reaction that has happened, and a lot of the reason we're getting the attention we're getting, is people are hungry for answers that don't just whitewash it, or that don't sugarcoat it. And as I'm fond of saying, it's Christ or chaos. And people say, looking around, that seems to be the case. And
so you're seeing a big expansion in membership in these last few years, really since COVID, right?
Yes, since 2019, our church community here has doubled in size. And during the height of COVID, it was like a refugee column, people moving here. chased here by blue state governors, chased here by COVID restrictions, chased here by pastors and elders who flaked on them, who closed their church down. And people, a lot of Christians were discovering that they did not have the Christian leadership that they thought they had.
Okay, we got to pause here. This is actually, one thing I appreciate about Doug Wilson is that he is very clear about the things that have radicalized these folks to go even further to the right. So to be clear, in Doug's mind, clown world and chaos looks like mask mandates during a pandemic, social distancing guidelines during a pandemic. It looks like transgender and queer people having access to the same constitutional rights and even some media visibility that folks like Doug are used to having. For them, that is what clown world is. Like, there's no one forcing Doug to divorce his wife and marry a man. That's not happening. But for Doug, just the fact that other people are out there and in some parts of America are being celebrated for who they are, that makes all of this like this huge reaction of like, well, the reason why we're exploding is because people are losing their minds at this crazy drift we have as a country. What is the crazy drift? Like, what are we actually talking about here? It's so minimal. We're just expanding visibility for people who historically have been marginalized. And for Doug, that's too big of a pill to swallow.
Well, and I think a big piece of that too is not even that. Like, I feel like a lot of their push is talking about trans people. They think transgender ideology is invading the schools. Right. So what he's talking about is quote unquote clown world or whatever he's talking about. It's because right-wing media is who cannot stop talking about trans people. Like, trans people have always existed, always existed. We're just now, it just seems like they're everywhere now because right-wing media won't stop talking about them. They're obsessed.
Yeah. What is the stat that at like the collegiate level, there are, out of 500,000 athletes, there are 10 who are transgender. 10 out of 500,000. That is nothing. That is a drop in the bucket. That's not even a drop in the bucket. And yet, you would think, based on right-wing media, that not only are transgender people like half the population, but they are a contagion that, if you're not careful, will spread to you or to your kids, and your kids will be quote-unquote trans, right? This is how the rhetoric works. And so it's just so evident that what Doug Wilson is really saying is that we don't like that America had a broader, more diverse set of people being represented in media and being given the same access to rights that I have. And therefore, we are doubling down in our resistance to that in the name of God.
Yeah, it's so stupid. And for the record, like, be trans, like, be who you're meant to be. There's absolutely, I just want to make clear, like, we are trans rights or human rights.
Yes, 100%.
Podcast, people, whatever. But I just want to point out too, like, he's basing this also on just blatant misinformation. Like the idea that kids now are identifying as cats, and so there's litter boxes and classrooms.
Oh my God,
like, that's not a true story. Right. They ran with that, and now I have people that are in my comments spewing that as if that's fact when it's 100%. Not. It's just 100%. Like they've built up. Not only are they at the culture war against legitimate like trans people, because they don't like trans people, but they're also inventing stories that aren't true and warring against that and rallying all their base of like, well, teachers are transing your kids. Even Donald Trump said something similar to that in one of the debates. Like 100%. They're just spewing stuff that's just not true.
Yes, and that's because Christian nationalism always needs an outgroup to scapegoat for society's ills, right? And usually it's a minority. It's immigrants who are invading the country and destroying your livelihood. It is trans people who are coming after your kids, right? These are not powerful groups of people. They are historically either on the fringe of society, or they're a minority, or they have less rights than other people, especially if you're undocumented as an immigrant in this country. Yet people like Doug in that world want to cast all of society's problems on those people, right? While they ignore the real problem of white nationalism, of white supremacy. I mean, one quick example of this, right, is the recent horrific Minneapolis shooting, which was terrible. The person looks like they, in some capacity, were transgender. We know that transgender people actually are underrepresented as far as the demographic that commits mass shootings. It's actually white men who are overrepresented in that demographic. Yet, if you look at right-wing media, they were so quick to blame the person's gender identity for the reason they did that horrific act. But whenever it's a white male who does this, oh, it's a mental health issue. Oh, it has nothing to do with who they are as a person, right? Because they're always in service to maintaining power and control at the expense of a minority outgroup. That's the logic of Christian nationalism.
Right. And they just need to point towards anything except for the guns.
Except for the guns. Exactly right.
Which is the actual problem.
100%.
They thought shepherds were supposed to protect the sheep, and when the pressure came, it didn't happen.
Would you define yourself as a Christian nationalist?
Yes.
And how do you define that?
Well, mostly because I much prefer it to the names I usually get called.
How do you define that? Is it you are a Christian and you want this nation to be a Christian nation?
Yeah, I'm a Christian, and I'm an American who loves this country. So put those two things together, and since I believe that my Christianity is not something that is to be believed by me behind my eyes and between my ears, it's a public truth.
What do you say to people of different faiths all over the world who don't believe that and have a different God, a different understanding of life and how we all came here?
Yeah, I would say let's have a Bible study. Let's talk about it. Depending on what they've heard, I would want to assure them that the fact that we differ over who God is or differ over ultimate reality does not give me warrant to persecute you.
That's a lie. That is a lie. That is a straight up lie. So Doug Wilson he was the founder of Canon Publishing, Canon Press. One of the people that they published under that name was someone named Stephen Wolfe, who wrote the book, The Case for Christian Nationalism. Stephen Wolfe on a podcast. Actually, you know what, April? Let me just pull it up. Let me pull it up real quick, and I will grab it for us. And we can just watch what Stephen Wolfe has to say. Okay, so I pulled the clip up. This is Stephen Wolfe talking on a podcast about what he envisions to be a Christian nation. This is an unedited clip. This is not AI. Here's what he has to say.
For men, and it's saying like what's gonna prevent us from being Christian nationalists? Well, what's to bring it in a Christian nation that follows kind of principles of Christian nationalism. And I think one of it is going to be I don't think it could happen when women are generally kind of in charge and rule things. And that's because women tend not to. They're very empathetic. They tend to be more inclusive, and men tend to be more exclusive, and they tend to So there's these different traits that you see between the sexes, and in order to have a Christian nation where where blasphemy is punished by someone who seems well-meaning and nice and smiles big, you're going to have a guy who says, no, you're going to jail. I mean, or whatever it is that you're fined them. I mean, because I'm all for blasphemy laws, by the way. If you're going to suppress atheism, I mean, there might be some very nice guy who has a big smile, loves atheism. Like, no, atheism is crushed. It's not going to be tolerated.
There you go. I don't know, Doug. I think maybe you're lying when you say that. I think that under Doug's view of Christian nationalism, other religions and atheists would absolutely be punished by law under blasphemy laws that would be enacted underneath his worldview.
Yeah, and he writes that in his book too. Like, he talks about how feminism, empathetic feminism, has been like a downfall of society. And in line with that, about punishing those who wouldn't agree, he writes this in his book. He said, crafting policy and ethics generally in a fallen world requires us to consider unpleasant trade-offs, and magistrates must have the fortitude to enact and enforce the greatest good, despite unfortunate costs involved, and Christians should recognize the necessity of such choice and shun the moralism that limits action.
Is that Doug or is that Stephen saying that?
That's Stephen Wolfe from his book, The Case for Christian Nationalism.
Yeah. Published under Doug Wilson Canon Press.
Yes.
So.
Right. And they've never, to my knowledge, fully support and endorse that book.
Yes, 100%. 100%. Do you want to keep going, or is there something else that you wanted to respond to?
Oh yeah, I want to say too, earlier he said when she asked him if he's a Christian nationalist, and he said yes, because I'm a Christian who loves my country. That is a BS definition of Christian nationalism.
Totally.
I am a Christian who loves my country, but I want to say there is a difference between being patriotic and having patriotism versus having nationalism, because if you love your country, it is patriotic to want the most rights for the most people, to want a world that is better for everybody. Nationalism, though, is wanting what's best for your people, for my people.
That's right.
It elevates one ideology to the detriment of others. So for him to say I'm a Christian who just loves my country, that's a very cop-out way of saying what Christian nationalism actually is.
Right. I mean, both those terms, Christian and nationalist, are doing a lot of heavy lifting behind the scenes, right? So, yeah. All right, let's keep it going then.
For men, and it's saying...
That's the wrong one. This one.
So we're going to talk about this because the Christian faith does not advance by the sword. The Christian faith advances by preaching, the sword of the Spirit. Planting churches, preaching, declaring, etc. So I'd want to visit with them. I'd want to imitate what the Apostle Paul did all through the book of Acts. He comes to Athens and he preaches Christ and the resurrection to a city full of idolaters, but he doesn't mount a military campaign. Yeah.
What would you say to historic scholars who say America was not founded as a Christian nation?
I would have fun with them.
Don't you think if the framers had the same vision as you, that this is a Christian nation, that they would have made that explicit in the Constitution and not have put in the Establishment Clause and the prohibition of religious tests for office holders, that they would have made it explicit in the documents?
The federal government may not have a church of the United States. Like the Church of England, the Church of Denmark is the Lutheran Church. They flat prohibited a church of the United States. And they flat prohibited religious tests for office at the federal level.
Thomas Jefferson, for his part, was a big proponent of religious liberty. Right. It was one of his big accomplishments. Yeah. It's on his gravestone that he had this religious liberty law passed in Virginia.
Yeah.
So what would you say to historic scholars who would point to that and say, the framers of this country did not mean for this to be a Christian nation. They meant for it to be a nation where people can exercise their religion freely, no matter what that religion is.
First, I would invite these historic scholars in the most friendly way possible to have a public debate on the subject. I think I don't want to, King Ahab in the Old Testament says, let not him who puts on his armor boast like him who takes it off. But I think I would do okay.
Doug, just so people know, Doug has no formal training theologically or historically, and I would love to watch Andrew Seidel, our friend over at Americans United, absolutely take on Doug's. It would be an absolute bloodbath. I mean, this guy has no defense, because if you read the Constitution, it's very clear that there is no Christian nation. There is no federal government that's supposed to mandate a certain type of Christianity. For people like Doug, another way of thinking about them is like they are Christian supremacists. They believe that they have a calling by God to take over the country and to institute their very particular view of what they call biblical law and overwrite American civil law with that biblical law. That goes against literally just the foundational First Amendment Establishment Clause. It's so clear it does that. But for Doug, he's like, no, it's a Christian nation, and I can go toe to toe with anyone on that and do just fine. How, Doug? How?
Because he just has talking points, and they have a lot of cognitive dissonance. Because I remember arguing for the same thing of that we were founded as a Christian nation. When people bring up the separation of church and state, I would say yes, kind of like what he's saying, but that was to keep the government out of churches, not to keep the church out of the government. And it's like a very, very fine line that we were straddling, but that's how they justify it. It's cognitive dissonance, mental gymnastics.
Right, because imagine saying that you're all for blasphemy laws when the First Amendment says that Congress will not make any laws respecting or prohibiting the free exercise of religion, right? So just those two things they are diametrically opposed to each other. But for Doug and these Christian nationalists, somehow through maybe cognitive dissonance, it makes complete sense. It's unbelievable.
I do think he's being a little on good behavior because he's being interviewed by CNN.
Totally.
Because they would totally rule out other religions. The idea that he would be like, we would just have a conversation. Like, BS.
Yeah, BS. 100%.
And I think I would do okay because I'd be able to point to the primary documents as well.
How would a Muslim or a Mormon or even a Catholic fit into your version of a Christian nation?
These are good questions.
So one of the reasons we have such problems with assimilating Muslims and all these different Hindus is that there are so many of them, right? So if we had a Christian republic and a Muslim came to Disneyland with his family, we have no problems. But when they fill up Dearborn, Michigan, that's just not. You can. It says in Amos 3:3, can two walk together except they be agreed? You cannot put alien worldviews together, cheek by jowl, and have peace, right? So.
But this is so racist and xenophobic.
This is Doug. See, this is why Doug is so dangerous because he says it so politely. But this is like KKK talking points, okay? This is Grand Wizard talking points about how you can't assimilate with different different people, different ethnic groups, etc. Look, to be clear, I live in New Jersey, April, okay? 8.5 million people. We are the most densely populated state in America. We have a huge Muslim population. There's a huge Hindu population here. In fact, there's a mosque 10 minutes down the road from me. And guess what? We get along just fine. Me and my friend Muhammad, whose family was arrested by ICE, we get along just fine. We sit, we have dinner, we talk about life, we discuss different views of our faiths, and we get along just fine. But for Doug, there are too many Muslims in America. So what does that mean? This is why Christian nationalists are for mass deportations. You see the logic behind it. Ultimately, right, America must be kept not just a Christian nation, a white Christian nation. This is a white theology, right? Being preached by a man who inhales this stuff and then regurgitates it in more soft-spoken language that becomes more palatable for a wider audience. But ultimately, Doug wants less brown-skinned people in America.
I would just like to point out that according to the 2020 census, it estimated about 4.5 million Muslim Americans live in the United States, which makes up about 1.34%.
But there are too many.
There's just so many of them.
So many.
So annoying.
It's so annoying. Yeah. And again, like, this is why we call it white Christian nationalism. It's racism. It's xenophobia. Yeah. This is what's underneath this. It ain't. Notice how, by the way, he takes, I think, Amos 3:3 completely out of context, right? He just takes this random Bible verse to reinforce his point. Amos is not talking about that. Give me a break, Doug. So frustrating.
Basically, I think a lot of the religious turmoil that we have, the clashes that we would have, could be addressed by a sane immigration policy, not a policy that tries to regulate what people can say or do in their religious convictions while here.
So the foundation for you is you believe this is a Christian nation, right, despite the debate from historic scholars.
Exactly. But notice that when the Muslim says to me, who are you to say? I can say, all right, we have to live together. Who are you to say which way it should go? And then the secularist comes in and says, let's do it this way. And Muslim and I would both turn to him and say, and who are you to say?
So you feel like we can't have a functioning society?
Yeah, we can't.
Without.
But we do.
And look at our society currently.
Well, maybe not now.
Do you believe?
Well, right. I mean, but notice
maybe
how
not
Doug
with Trump in charge.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Doug says, look at our society not functioning. But who's the instigator of that? Who are the ones who are irritating the American population? Who stormed the Capitol on January 6th? Right? Whose president is the most dehumanizing, vilifying president in our lifetime, if not all in U.S. history? It's not Joe Biden. It's not Barack Obama. It's Trump. Who lies the most? It's Trump and his administration. right? So like, this is what's so interesting, is that they're the ones stirring the pot. They're the ones who are instigating all of this tension and chaos. And then they sit back and go, look, our world's in chaos. You need us in charge so we can make it, out of the chaos can come order. But you're the ones instigating it. You're the ones. It's not, look, Donald Trump is not a Muslim extremist, right? Doug Wilson is not a Muslim extremist whose mosque doubled in the past 3 years because COVID and tyranny. No, these are white Christians. They weren't swinging an ISIS flag on January 6th. They were swinging a Christian flag on January 6th. Right. Give me a break. Give me a freaking break. Gosh.
It's so disingenuous too.
So disingenuous.
To think we don't function. We can't get along. Like, you are the one who's not getting along with everybody. Everyone else is getting along just fine.
By the way, last thought on this, shared values are important, right? This is why me and my friend Qasim Rashid is a Muslim. We agree on so many things, even though we have different beliefs about God and our holy books, etc. But we share the same values of human life and human equality for all. That's the Declaration of Independence, right? All men are created equal. But for Doug, that's not really true. See, Doug is the one who actually doesn't believe the American ideals that are in our Declaration of Independence and in our Constitution, right? He doesn't believe that all men are equal. Some deserve blasphemy laws. Some should be deported. Some worship a God that maybe is demonic, right? And therefore, their view isn't as worthy as mine. It's really amazing when you start unpacking this stuff, the house of cards that is behind all of this.
Yeah. Shall we continue?
Yes.
Secular society is basically a religion of its own that is the antithesis of your Christianity?
Secularism is a religious faith.
No, it's not.
Commitment.
That is
Remember
garbage.
What I said about if there is no
that
God
is
above
garbage.
The state is God. Mm-hmm. Well, if that's the case for the secularist, and I believe it is, and it's a religious level commitment.
It's not.
Then who's in charge of the current secular God?
And how much?
But that's why we have checks and balances. Right? I mean, that's the whole point. The reason why our society has a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch is that they're designed to be in tension, right, to keep each other in check. What happens when the guy that you elect starts gutting those checks and balances, starts defying court orders, then he becomes God. He becomes God. Like, I don't know if Doug understands this, but God is not physically embodied anywhere in the world. Jesus is not physically embodied anywhere in the world. So it's up to us as humans to figure out how to make this all work, right? So the like what Doug is saying essentially is that, well, God has to be in charge, aka we have to be in charge because we represent the interests of God. Talk about arrogance and pride.
Egotistical. So much pride. Yeah. Pride comes before the fall.
Yeah, that's in the Bible, Doug.
I'm going to be a literalist and believe in that right now.
Is your post-millennialism belief driving all of this?
She did her research.
Yes.
Tell our viewers about that, what that is.
Most American evangelicals are premillennial, meaning that they believe everything's falling apart, and when things get really bad, the Antichrist is going to take over, and then Jesus will come again and save us from all that. But it's a pretty grim view of human history between now and the end. So that's the premillennial understanding. A postmillennialist is someone who believes that the gospel is going to be victorious in the world. The nations will, in fact, be discipled.
And you have said, I don't have a direct pipeline to Pete Hegseth.
Right.
But don't you think your influence
I don't believe that for a
is
second.
having an impact right now?
I hope so. I write books, and I don't write and publish books to launch them into the void. I want people to read them and be influenced by them. Mm-hmm. And when people read them and are influenced by them and they're in a position to actually do something, it's gratifying. I'm happy about that.
Because for many years, decades frankly, your views were really seen as fringe.
Yes.
Now do you see them?
Not by me, not by my wife.
Not by you or your wife or your community, but
yes.
They were seen as fringe. Do you now see them becoming more mainstream?
Yes, I do.
I want to pause here. I want to pull something up, and I want to read you an excerpt from one of Doug Wilson's books. Okay, this is an excerpt from one of Doug Wilson's books, the book Southern Slavery as It Was, which he wrote with a white supremacist, by the way. This is a quote that he pulls for his own blog purposes. Okay, so I'm pulling what Doug posted on his own blog. Here's the full quote. Quote, slavery as it existed in the South was not an adversarial relationship with pervasive racial animosity. Because of its predominantly patriarchal character, it was a relationship based upon mutual affection and confidence. There has never been a multiracial society which has existed with such mutual intimacy and harmony in the history of the world. The credit for this must go to the predominance of Christianity. The gospel enabled men who were distinct in nearly every way to live and work together, to be friends and often intimates. This happened to such an extent that moderns indoctrinated on civil rights propaganda would be thunderstruck to know the half of it. Slave life was, to the slaves, a life of plenty, of simple pleasure, of food, clothes, and good medical care. In spite of the evils contained in the system, we cannot overlook the benefits of slavery for both blacks and whites. Slavery produced in the South a genuine affection between the races that we believe we can say has never existed in any nation before the war or since. That's a
I've
real
never
quote
heard
from Doug
that
Wilson.
full quote before. I've heard excerpts from that excerpt, but that full thing is so damning. What on earth are you talking about?
This is the man who is saying how he was friends, but now he's not anymore, and who, is happy that Pete Hegseth reads his writings. Is it any wonder why Pete Hegseth is currently spending 10 million taxpayer dollars to restore Confederate monuments as we speak? Guys, the link is right there. Like, we're showing you the link directly.
I have zero doubts that if Doug Wilson lived during the time leading up, like the antebellum period before the Civil War, he would have owned slaves.
All of these right-wing pundits would have.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it is so maddening to me that instead of looking at, you know what, maybe we should reevaluate some of our beliefs because some people used our belief system to justify owning Black people. And we should reevaluate that because that's not okay. But instead, no, he's like, actually, it's just proof of how true our beliefs are because we were kind to them.
Yes.
What are you talking about?
Yes.
Also, he has a very speaking of whitewashed, he brought that up earlier. He is the one whitewashing this history. The thousands of accounts of white slave masters who were violent and raped the people that they owned and beat them and killed them and sold them and trafficked them.
Yep.
And that he could write that to be like, oh no, that's just proof that we are good, godly people. What on earth is he talking about?
This is literal lost cause mythology. This is someone who thinks the Confederacy wasn't that bad. It was pretty great. Slavery was actually beneficial. But again, this is not as uncommon in evangelicalism as you would think. I mean, John MacArthur, we played a couple weeks ago a section of him talking about how slavery can be great if you have the right master, right? And John MacArthur was another big name in white evangelicalism. So again, this space is steeped in this, downplaying or minimizing at best of slavery. And in some cases, actually making it seem like it was a good thing for Black people. And this is a man, I want to be so clear to the audience, this is a man that Pete Hegseth reads. This is a man that is highly influential in politics right now. Doug Wilson just planted a church right in the heart of D.C., and Pete Hegseth attended it. Okay?
Yeah, I know. Well, and this also plays into the whole manifest destiny thing. Like when we came over and we colonized and committed a genocide against indigenous people, there was this belief then that, maybe we took rights away and land away from these people and kicked them out of their homes, but we brought them Jesus.
Right.
And there's no greater gift they can have. The way that they can justify it, it's just so terrible. And the same thing with the slave trade too. There was this belief that if you were in Africa, you were worshiping all these demonic entities and that voodoo was satanic, and then you saved them from that. And technically you owned them and they weren't really full people, but at least they knew Jesus. I think Jamar Tisby, he had this quote in his book, The Color of Compromise, which if you want a true history of the racism in the white evangelical church, that book
it will
just
wreck you.
Blew my mind.
Same.
But he talks about how the gospel that was given to enslaved people was that God could save your soul, but not break your chains.
Exactly. Exactly. And this kind of ideology is what's now popular again in white evangelicalism, and now has major access to political power.
Ugh.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue.
They have become, my views on a number of things have become steadily more mainstream, and
he's not wrong on this.
Without me moving at all.
That's true.
I think people have come to you. They've come to yours.
So basically, what has happened as the whole zeitgeist of the official zeitgeist has moved steadily left into more and more woke territory. A number of normies, as I called them earlier, looked at where that was going and said, I don't want to go there. And so maybe we ought to give that Wilson character a second look. He sounded pretty crazy 20 years ago, but I'm rethinking that.
And what are you seeing happen in the Trump administration right now that reflects your Christian values?
The series of appointments in the federal judgeships that led to the overturning of Roe would be the central thing. If our church doesn't have a spire with a bell in it yet, but if we had the bell, that would have been, when Dobbs came down, we would have been ringing it all day.
And you want to see Obergefell?
I want to see Obergefell go the same direction.
There it is. Look, like April, you and I have been saying this for years. Obergefell's on the table. And we were told by a lot of people, no, that's extreme. No, it would never happen. No,
we were fear-mongering.
Yeah, no, there's a whole dark money side to this. There are billionaire organizations that are funded by billionaires that have the legal ability to challenge these things up to the Supreme Court that is ruled by the right now. Okay, Obergefell is absolutely on the table. Absolutely, it's already gonna be challenged. I mean, they already made a petition to the court to challenge it. This is what they want. They want a country where women have no bodily autonomy. They want a country where even birth control pills are washed down the drain. They want a country where queer people are forced back into the closet. This is what they want. And because they're getting access to political power, they can be more and more open about it, right? I mean, even the Southern Baptist Convention, the biggest evangelical conglomeration in America, they voted on a resolution to overturn Obergefell.
Right.
Wake up, guys. This is what's coming.
Well, and I think it's important because if you just listen to what he said earlier, where he was talking about we want to change this to be a Christian nation by just persuasion, by just conversations. We're not bringing a sword. But what they are bringing is legislating their belief system that is going to oppress everybody. It's going to oppress everybody except for white males.
Right. Yep. That is their
white
sword.
Christian males.
Yeah.
Like that. And so he could say, like, well, we're not going to be violent. But when you are telling a woman that she is not in control of her own body and that body belongs to whatever man she's with or the government, that is a form of violence. That sort of oppression, like, just because you're not bringing a literal sword doesn't mean that your ideology and what you are fighting for is not violent.
Right. There's no reason to have physical violence when you're the ones in control writing the laws and can enforce it with violence if you want to, right? That's what they want.
Yeah.
Very pleased with the naming of the fraudulent behavior that has overseeing the squandering of trillions of dollars. One of my old jokes was that I'm opposed to chaplains praying at Congress, because the Bible says not to turn a den of thieves into a house of prayer. And it's just the pillage that is going on there has been remarkable, and I'm just very gratified at the efforts of Doge and other things like that to put a spotlight on those sorts of things.
To take money away from people who need it.
Yeah, and Doge has been thoroughly debunked. It did nothing. It did nothing besides hurt more people. By the way, just a quick antidote here. Doug Wilson, when 9/11 happened, said the worst thing about 9/11 was not the planes going to the towers. It was the ecumenical church service that happened in Congress, where they had a female pastor praying and they had a Sikh praying. Oh yeah, there's audio of this. We shared it on our podcast. I think it's episode 66. We shared that audio. That's what Doug Wilson said was the worst part of 9/11. Like, again, this guy is an extremist. Just because he talks like grandpa and looks like Santa Claus doesn't mean he's somehow benign or like not dangerous. He is a Christian supremacist extremist who believes this stuff. He believes it.
And that's not even getting into his wife, who promotes child abuse.
Yes.
Hitting your children.
I'm sure he'll get into it.
And what about banning transgender military members?
Oh, that's great.
You think that's great?
That's absolutely great.
And gender
issues.
Gender issues.
As I mentioned before the interview, I was in the submarine service, for example, and whatever idiot thought of putting women on submarines.
Well, what would you say to a female submariner who's been doing the job and kicking butt doing it?
I'd say, yeah, we don't want you down here kicking butt.
Why?
Because I went to sea a couple of times. Mm-hmm. We were submerged for 2.5 months. All right. 2.5 months, let's say 130 guys in a submarine with 3 women on it. Okay, so let's put 130 horny sailors and 3 women and submerge them out in the middle of the Atlantic for 2.5 months. What could go wrong? So I'd say, come on.
You have a...
Do you want to respond to that, April?
Yeah, I would just like to say, control your own dick, Doug. Sorry, can I say that?
You can.
What
hey,
does that have to do with women? Like, you're the... that is a problem with the men. That has nothing to do with the women. Also, that's like totally homophobic too. Like, you don't think any of the men were attracted to each other?
Right.
Like,
I'm telling you, man,
so
Doug,
annoyed.
This is how Doug sees the world. Like women are to be at home. Women are to make sandwiches and have babies. He says that on his own blogs. Like all these things I'm saying, there are receipts for with this man. This is what he believes.
It infuriates me to no end that people like Doug Wilson are like, women are the weaker vessel. They should not be in charge. Men need to be in charge. But suddenly a man can't control himself if he's in a submarine and there's a woman around.
Nope. Can't do it.
Maybe women aren't the weaker vessel, Doug.
Well, that's the same thing with trans women, right? Is that okay? So they're too weak to serve in the military, but they're too strong to compete in sports. I'm
pick a struggle.
What's the struggle here? Like, what is the threat that you're talking about?
It's so stupid.
Patriarchal.
It's so dumb.
Oh, it's so dumb.
View of how society should be.
Sure. Yeah. There's certain places that ought to be male-only spaces, and combat is one of them.
No.
And being closed up in a submarine is another one, and so what it boils down to is that sort of thing. Egalitarianism has been the basic platform, and feminism is a subset of egalitarianism, and you can't split the difference on this sort of thing. So if you're going to have a submarine, you have to make a decision who's going to be on it, right?
No, you don't.
How people who are qualified?
If you just have adults in the room, and newsflash, Doug, there are men out there that could be in a submarine with women, and everything's fine.
Everything's fine.
Because they're not douchebags.
Like, how about, Doug, right? Like, the Army sets standards for how a submarine should be operated, and whoever can pass those standards, regardless of what's between their legs or their sexual orientation, can do the job. Like, how about we just do that? I mean, this isn't that complicated, right? Isn't this a meritocracy? If you're qualified to do the job, you should be able to do the job. And this is what Doug wants. He doesn't want DEI hires. He wants meritocracy. Well, here you go. It's not complicated, Doug. It's not complicated.
And I love how, too, they claim that drag queens are sexualizing our children, and trans people and gay people and queer people, like, in society, sexualizing our children. Doug Wilson and his ilk are the people that are sexualizing children, that are telling girls to cover up their shoulders because a man might lust after you. Well, that's not on the girl.
You know that Doug wrote like an erotic novel, right? About like a sex robot?
No.
What? You didn't know this? Hold on.
What is it?
Look, here it is. Yeah, it's called Ride, Sally, Ride. It's a novel about love, the crack up of the USA, and refusing to back down when the whole world calls you crazy. It's 2 decades in the future, and a Christian college student named Ace Hartwick has just destroyed his neighbor's so-called wife, actually a sex bot named Sally, in a trash compactor. Soon, Ace will be on trial for murder. Unfortunately for Ace, everyone despises his kind of radical Christianity, and in the fragile America of the future, all the juries are fixed. It's a real thing. Yeah.
According to the front cover, it was... Oh, apparently when he wrote Evangelifish, and that was Christianity Today's best fiction winner.
Here we go.
I don't know.
Here's a little here's a little excerpt I'm going to read. This is not safe for work, but this is Doug Wilson, the man of family values and purity, all this stuff. Quote, this is from his book, Ride, Sally, Ride. He walked into their house and noticed that no lights were on except in the back of the house. He followed the light down the hallway and looked in on what had to be the master bedroom. Sally was propped up against the headboard, blindfolded and topless. Yeah, this is Doug Wilson. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
That's
so
confusing.
Again, right? Like they're not sexualizing anything. They're not sexualizing children. By the way, Doug Wilson also married off a known pedophile in his church to a woman, and that man reoffended with his own infant. Okay, look up the case of Steven Sittler. This is all stuff you can look up, friends. I'm not lying to you. This is the This is the people who's like, society's gone too far to the left. Transgender people and queer people. Oh, my drag queen story hour. Meanwhile, this guy is marrying off actual pedophiles to women in his church.
Jeez. I will say, I don't know the plot, like where he goes in his novel, but I do think sex robot is actually what they want out of women. They want a woman that will come in and be their doormat and do whatever they want and have sex with them whenever they want. And that's it. And 100%. Be fully controlled by the husband.
100%. I mean, it's the Handmaid's Tale. Right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it Michael Knowles the other day who literally said that it's a wife's duty to give her husband sex whenever she wants? That's what robots do. They do whatever you want whenever you want.
And Joel Webbin recently too, another Christian nationalist pastor recently said that he doesn't think women should even be in the public sphere.
Anyway, let's keep going.
Either the secular egalitarian worldview will prevail, or a patriarchal Christian worldview will prevail, or a patriarchal Muslim view. Somebody's going to have to decide.
But bottom line, do you believe men and women are equal in society?
Well, they are in our society, but they're not equal in the world.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah,
because
break that down, Doug.
Are different. They're just different. When I said I don't want women in combat, it's not an arbitrary rule. It's not like we want the women to stand on this side of the room and the men to stand on that side. There's certain things that men do better than women do. There's certain things that women do better than the men do. And I think we should let Scripture and natural revelation tell us which is which. Men are good at smashing and breaking things. They're good at fighting. And when you have this egalitarian dogma that women and men have to be the same, what happens is it's like saying everybody has to be able to dunk the basketball. If you've got an egalitarian dogma that says everyone has to be able to dunk, the only thing you're going to wind up doing is lowering the net. And so consequently, you've got firemen. One of the things that Pete Hegseth has done is instead of making a regulation concerning the women, he just said, we're back to a uniform standard of fitness.
By the way,
going into certain avenues,
This has been debunked. There was never like a women's standard and a men's standard in the military. Okay, this has been like a debunked thing since the beginning. It is, oh my God, it's just so insufferable that again, Doug wants a society. He thinks that women are good for really two things: serving men, submitting to men, and making babies for men. Mm-hmm. That's his view of, well, of course, women can do things that men can't do. Women can serve men, and men don't serve men. Women serve men. That's what he's saying. That's what he believes.
And men don't serve women.
Of course not.
Because men can fight and men can dunk. I would bet my money that Doug Wilson cannot dunk a basketball.
Guaranteed. And that's the thing. They bring these when they bring up the gender, well, men can do this and women can't do this. It's usually physical abilities, and usually what they say are things that most men also cannot do, and that some women can do. I would love to see Doug in the ring with a professional female boxer. I would love to see it. Go ahead, Doug. Go ahead. The thing is, smash things better than her.
People are just different. It really has no bearing on whether they're male or female.
100%.
There's people in general are just different. I am better at sports than a lot of men. And there's
You're
a lot of
better
men
than me.
that are better cooks than I am. And this has nothing to do with us being male or female. It's just like we're just made different. And that's like the beauty of the diverse world that God created. Like we all have different abilities and different talents. And it has nothing to do with what's between our legs.
Agreed. Doug. Are you listening, Doug?
Places. And that de facto is going to exclude many of the women. Right?
But do you think the underlying premise was what you're saying? Women shouldn't be in combat.
Correct.
Our viewers might hear that and think he wants to turn this into a totalitarian, patriarchal society. He wants to turn America into Gilead with handmaids.
Right.
What do you say to that?
What I want to do is keep women out of submarines, which is not totalitarianism.
That's one example.
Right. It's you've got to decide which way you're going to go. So, for example, when you send Bruno into shower with the junior high girls, and you force that on them, and you arrest parents who protest at the school board meeting, I would call that totalitarian. And what I'm trying to I'm not fond of quoting Vladimir Lenin positively, but he once said, whom? Whom? Who's doing what to whom? So when someone says, oh, you're imposing on the woman who wants to be a fighter pilot or who wants to be a submariner, you're imposing on her. I say yes, but what you're doing is imposing on other people. You're imposing your worldview on other people. There's no way.
So you see it, they can't coexist.
There's no way that antithetical worldviews can exist without one imposing on the other.
Yeah.
Can I just say?
Yeah, go ahead.
That comparison is so disingenuous when he says you're imposing Bruno on junior high girls. First of all, I'm assuming he's talking about a trans girl who's probably not going by Bruno.
Probably not.
And is identifying and is a woman. Like the problem is they don't see trans women as women. They see them as men pretending to be women with the intention of preying on women, which is so stupid because men assault and prey on women every single second of every single day, and no one has to pretend to be a woman to do that. In fact, with the vitriol that trans people face, no man is going to go through the effort of transitioning socially with the sole purpose of preying on women. You can prey on women for free. They do it all the time. Right. And if you really want to prey on women, go be a pastor.
100%.
Free reign to prey 100%. On women. No accountability. It's so disingenuous. But like and then to compare that to telling a woman, sorry, you can't be a fighter pilot because you have a vagina. Like that's actually oppressive. Like the trans women, like I know trans people. Okay, I'm married to a non-binary. My spouse is non-binary, and as a result, we've met tons of trans people in the last few years, and they are amazing. And I will tell you, when the trans people that I know have so much anxiety when they have to go to the bathroom, because they are scared of what they might face in that bathroom. They want to go in, just be another. They want to be invisible. They don't want to be noticed. It's not about being noticed. It's about being who you are. And trans people today are some of the bravest people in the world to live in this society as your full self, when your full self is constantly being demonized, is honestly just such a brave. It's when people like Doug exist and they just want to terrorize trans people for no reason.
Yes.
It just infuriates me to no end. They're not, trans people are not predators. The predators are in the freaking pews.
Trans people are 4 times more likely to experience violence than their cisgender counterparts. Okay? Like this is the reality. And for Doug, in his mind, it's an act of war for trans people to exist and be able to use facilities that correspond to their gender identity. Right? Like a trans woman using the bathroom in a mall on the female side is an act of war for Doug. Doug will never be in that bathroom. Doug will never be in that bathroom, right? Because he's a man. But for him, just the thought of that happening in America is an act of war. It's ridiculous. And again, think about like all the other things that are more pressing than that. Like the fact that a lot of Americans go bankrupt because of medical debt. There are millions of Americans who don't want to call an ambulance when they're in need because they can't afford the bill. That's a way more pressing issue, Doug, than a trans woman using a female bathroom. to relieve themselves. Like, give me a break. Give me a break, dude.
There's also a lot of like businesses and restaurants that have started using gender neutral bathrooms, either in addition to male and female, having a gender neutral option, or just making single use stalls all gender neutral. And people like Doug fight against that because they say it's woke ideology. 100%. But that's actually that's a really great compromise. If you don't want trans people in your bathroom, then give them an option to have a bathroom that they can use on their own. And they're against that too.
Because they don't want them to exist. This is Christian nationalism on display, right? Things that go outside their hierarchies and their gender norms cannot exist. That's why Michael Knowles said that we have to, quote, eradicate transgenderism, right? It's not about making room or accommodating or even just giving them their space and leaving them alone. That even just leaving them alone but knowing they exist is too far for these people. Yeah. We have to be aware of this. This is the goal, friends. And I don't like to speak so extreme, but they want these people erased. They want them erased. They want them not to exist. It's a major problem. So
I was in a bathroom with a trans woman like a month ago. True story. And do you know what happened?
Tell me.
I was wearing a jumpsuit, right? So you have to like completely. It's effort, and I couldn't button the top back myself. I couldn't reach it, and she buttoned it for me, and she was very helpful and very kind, and we had a great chat.
Wow,
and that was it.
That was it, huh?
That was it. Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe.
I was very underwhelmed. I was promised this huge dramatic situation to happen, and it just wasn't there.
All right, let's keep it going.
Have this community here in Moscow. You've built this Christian community. Why isn't it enough to just live that way and let everyone else live the way they want in America?
Great question.
We're happy to live that way as long as they let us, right?
Which they do.
Yes.
It's not going to shake out that way.
What do you mean?
It's got to give at some point, right? So,
what?
Here's an example.
Yeah, please, Doug.
The logic of egalitarianism means that our daughters are going to be drafted at some point.
No, it doesn't.
To go fight in some stupid foreign war.
So you see the slippery slope.
That.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've lived on this slippery slope my entire life.
But other people
pause. Just real quick. Phyllis Schlafly, back in the 70s, used this exact same fear-mongering that your daughters will be drafted to fight feminism and the ERA back then.
Yep.
And it never happened. No. And to be clear, I'm against the draft for anybody. I'm more of a pacifist. I think war is stupid. But what he's saying right here is just it's just never going to happen.
Realities that aren't existing. Doug's been a pastor for I think close to 30, maybe 40 years, and he's been able to do whatever he's wanted to do for that time. And he still thinks that he's at any minute going to be under attack and that there's a war raging. The guy has tried to take over the town of Moscow, Idaho, for crying out loud. Give me a break, dude. You have a small empire, and you're like, it's just not enough. Any day now, I could be persecuted for this.
Their biggest talking point is a slippery slope.
Oh, completely.
It's just a logical fallacy.
Right.
Slippery slope with your view that women's rights are just gradually taken away, for example.
Sure, but the slippery slope that I'm talking about is the one that we're actually sliding down.
No, are you kidding me?
You don't think they're sliding down your slippery slope?
No, I don't.
They just overturned Roe v. Wade.
Let's put it this way. I do believe that there have been instantiations of Christianity in politics that have gone very badly.
Like what?
Spanish Inquisition, or there are things like that I think, okay, that's no good, and we should never do that again. I'm an advocate of Christendom. But the first Christendom had some warts. It had some things that we don't ever want to do again. So there are slippery slopes on the Christian side of things, and I think we should guard against those things. But right now, that's not anywhere close to being our central problem.
You basically think you're David and Goliath.
Yeah.
I should be clear. We had an insurrection with the Christian flags a couple of years ago. And
that's not a slippery slope.
Doug thinks that there's no slippery slope that we're experiencing as Christians right now. Okay, Doug. Got it, buddy.
So over my shoulder right here, there is a poster of the cover of a book, and it says, "It's good to be a man."
Right.
What does that mean?
It means that that book is an argument that is a defensive reaction, defending young men who don't know who they are, because they have been taught their entire life that white heterosexual males are cancerous.
Well, they are committing most of the mass shootings. So I'm just saying, Doug, like, to be clear, I'm being facetious. I don't really believe that white men like myself are cancerous. But I mean, again, if they would use their own logic, they would be like all over this. They'd be like, whoa, we have a white violent men epidemic in this country. Look at all the mass shootings they keep on committing. But no, that now they're actually victims. These poor white men are victims of something else.
Right.
So masculinity is tagged as toxic masculinity. If a boy acts like a boy in school, we hit him on the head with a chemical rock. We don't know how to discipline them. We don't know how to make boys stand up straight. We don't know how to make them work hard.
We
don't know how to train boys.
It's like Adderall probably for ADHD.
Boys who are going to become men. One of the books that I wrote was called Future Men, because boyhood should be aimed at manhood, and boys and girls are not the same, and so you have to train them. You have to train girls to be women, and you have to train boys to be men. And if you don't do that, and you spend your time attacking boys for masculine traits, they're gonna grow up to be pretty screwed up. And
right now, I mean, a lot of people believe that there's a masculinity crisis in the United States. Just when you look at the data of, school test scores, graduation rates, that kind of thing. Are you seeing
absolutely
more men be drawn to your church
yes.
right now?
Yes. One of the things that is attractive to many of the people who have come here is that we're not apologetic about the masculinity that is present here. Now, neither are we apologetic for the femininity, but then as soon as you say masculinity, femininity, people say you're stereotyping. You're saying,
okay, I want to pause here and I want to say something. Don't forget, this is a masculinity that apologizes for slavery, or sorry, that defends slavery. This is a masculinity that thinks that you're so strong and tough until you're around a woman in a submarine. This is a masculinity that demands people submit to you so you can control them. This is a masculinity that wants blasphemy laws put into place in our country, that wants Muslims kicked out, that wants queer people erased. This sounds like a pretty snowflake level masculinity that can't tolerate anything that might make it uncomfortable on any level. And even going further, maybe even learning something new and changing one's mind.
It's so wild to me. And again, disingenuous that he would say, masculinity, now it's toxic masculinity. That's not true. No one's ever said all masculinity is toxic. There are toxic forms of masculinity, and that is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's why Allie Beth Stuckey used the word toxic for empathy. If it was like a mirror for toxic masculinity, which is actually a thing. There is no such thing as toxic empathy. I mean, maybe when I feel empathetic, when I sometimes see Trump and he looks sad, I'm like, oh.
Look, if I'm going to be fair, right? I understand how in some spaces on the internet, maybe if you say the wrong thing as a man, you kind of get lumped in with like other men that are problematic, right? Like I've seen that in like progressive spaces before. I understand that. No space is perfect. No, we're never going to find heaven on earth, so to speak, in this lifetime. I get that. So certainly there are critiques to make, and we should have the conversation. But what Doug is talking about is he's defending the kind of masculinity that gets away with like sexually assaulting women. That thinks that thinks that someone's wife owes them sex whenever they want, right? Someone who thinks it's appropriate to marry off a known pedophile to a younger woman in the church.
Right.
Yeah, that kind of masculinity is toxic because it hurts people and it's unaccountable and it's unrepentant and it can't look inward and critique itself to do better.
Well, and to be fair, Doug Wilson's form of masculinity is toxic. I mean, he was literally just talking about how he doesn't want women in combat. He doesn't believe women should be fighter pilots. He doesn't believe women should do what a man's job is. That is toxic. That is misogynistic and sexist.
100%. 100%.
Oh.
I think because we're over the hour mark, I think we should pause here and we can do a part 2 next week, because I don't want to like fast forward and miss all the stuff that needs to be responded to, but we're also kind of long in this episode, as is typical for us because there's always so much to say. So I think we can pause here and we'll come back next week. Thoughts?
What minute mark are we at? So
okay, remember. We're at we're at the 1950 mark. So we got about 12 minutes left in this interview.
Okay. Yeah, and we haven't even got to the repealing of the 19th.
Right.
That he talks about.
There's still some big bombs to drop. Friends, look, if you're looking for a better way forward when it comes to like what do we do with this stuff, I really recommend getting involved in the new Evangelicals community app called TNE Connect. We're actually starting Theology 101 classes. We have an educational starter pack that we're doing. We're doing a whole back to school series, and it's completely free. There is no cost to join. It's called TNE Connect. You can do it on the web or do it on your app store, Android or Apple. It's a great way to kind of find that better path forward that is not just critical of this kind of stuff that April and I do, but also offers you other ways to move forward, either as a Christian or someone who wants to find a more justice-oriented way of living in life. So I recommend checking that out. But yeah, I mean, I think for now, this is a good place to pause.
Yeah. Until next time.
Yeah.
A joyous interview to watch. Just makes you feel so good inside.
A joyous. April, a joy. I see what you did there.
A wit a bit of joy.
I love it. Friends, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video. We'll see you all next time.
Bye.